Hello and welcome to another and the first episode of the year for the World Class Real Estate Podcast. My name is Mark Worrall and I'm joined by Mr. Ian Macbeth. Happy New Year, pal. How are you?
Happy New Year. Yeah, really good. Really excited to be back in the swing of things, back to normality. Both the kids for the first day this year are at nursery and school. So that was quite nice, actually, to get the kids away.
Routine. Everyone's craving routine, aren't they?
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? And it's topical for what we're going to talk about today, actually. But how we love kind of that break of like carnage, and then 24 hours in, you're like, Jesus, someone please bring me back routine.
we I don't know about you, but we started back. I was only in for one day last week with my youngest's birthday, but everyone back in the office yesterday, and the amount of people saying, "Oh, looking forward to just getting back to work, getting the routine back in the life." The kids were back at school yesterday for us, and it feels like the year really started on the 6th, which I'm all right with. I don't particularly like starting on the 2nd, if I'm being perfectly honest, and because we were away over Christmas, that little bit of a longer weekend for me really worked. And when I came in the office yesterday, I was absolutely buzzing, ready to get started and excited as well, which I think is quite a privileged position to be in.
You have a good holiday. I mean, it looked awesome out in the snow for Christmas. Amazing.
It was. We're going to talk about having your best year as an estate agent, and a little bit about goals and what have you. And I was just sort of thinking about that before we jumped on, and that was a big goal for me last year to make that happen. And I'll share a little bit about some of the techniques that I used to do that. And yeah, it was so rewarding when we shut the door here on the 20th of December, knowing that we hit some business goals and some really significant personal goals. It was absolutely incredible. If anybody is thinking about taking the kids away into the snow for Christmas, I would very highly recommend it. Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, we were sat in the hot tub last night, me and the wife, after the kids went to bed, and we made the conscious decision that we're going to do Christmas away in 2025. Not in the snow, in the sunshine. Done the last couple of years at home, so yeah, I feel we'll have a sunshine Christmas. I craved sunshine as soon as we finished work. I really craved, I physically felt like I needed some vitamin D, and I think because I was a bit wrecked after a really stressful year, lots of running, lots of stuff going on with the kids, and obviously business being really active. We launched a couple of new businesses this year, and it was just a really busy year, and I felt a little bit burnt out, but I felt like I craved sunshine. So I want to kind of listen to the body and make sure that I have a really good year this year, but then have that trip booked at the end of the year, so that I'm not getting to kind of the 21st thinking, can I get a holiday booked in?
Yeah, a bit late by that stage.
Yeah, it was. I spoke to the travel agent. She said, you can, but it's going to cost you this. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
And I'm going to have to throw all the food away that we bought.
Yeah. But no, I'm excited for this episode because it's right up my lane, kind of talking about, being the best version of yourself, being the best estate agent you can be, and really covering some of those things that me and you do to make sure that we can stay on point and also progress every year. I was going for a run, surprise to no one. I was going for a run, and I was having a little think, and I was like, wow, actually 2025 is like a quarter of this century. It's the first quarter of this century that's gone. And then in the same breath, I was like, wow, I won't see the next century. None of us will at our age bracket see the next century. And I was like, well, this next chunk of century is so important for us. If you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, it's such a vital 25-year chunk, and you can do so much in 25 years. I always say people underestimate what can be done in 3 to 5 years and really overestimate what you can do in a year. So it was quite cool for me because in my head I was like, okay, it's a new year, but it's also a new chunk of the century. So how do you get this 25-year period to be everything you want it to be? And it starts with 2025. So that was what was going through my head. And needless to say, I had a really good run because I was buzzing after thinking.
The legs were pumping as the mind's going. It's you'd say that saying is quite well known, isn't it? Overestimate what you can achieve in a year, but underestimate what you can achieve in 3 to 5. And one of the things that we'll talk about, we love talking about it on this show, about consistency, and no doubt we're going to talk about routine as well. And the reason that those 3 to 5 year goals become achievable is the consistency. And I think if you are listening to this and you're thinking, oh, that all sounds, very ambitious, but I'm starting from this point. Ultimately, what we're talking about is being the best version of you. It doesn't matter where you are today. One of the things I wrote down this morning is just to improve each and every day. And I think that's really important. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing in life, if you can strive to just be better tomorrow than you are today, and better today than you were yesterday, those slight improvements each day will make a massive difference. And that's the thing that makes those 3 to 5 year goals seem very unachievable maybe now, but it's the compounding effect, like compound interest, for example.
Yeah. There's a guy called Jesse Isler who he had David Goggins stay with him for a month. I can't remember what business he's a successful business guy, but he's really cool. He does a lot of ultra running, like really, really into like living the best life that you can possibly live. Anyway, he's crazy enough to invite David Goggins to live with him for a month because he was like, I want to see what this guy's like. And Goggins said to him, well, man, if you're crazy enough to invite me, then I'm crazy enough to come. And basically lived with him for a month. But anyway, that's not the story I wanted to tell. That's a whole nother episode that you can listen to on all sorts of podcasts. But one of the things that Jesse Isler talks about in a year is he's got these 3 rules, and he basically lives by each year to have one major moment, major year-defining moment. So for me, for example, last year, mine was the Thames Path 100. That was my defining moment. It was my first point-to-point 100-mile race, not in a relay sort of fashion. And that was my year-defining moment to see if I could do that. So what is your year-defining moment that you want to achieve in 2025? That one thing that's not everything about the year is shaped by that, but if you achieve it, it's the thing you'll remember in 25 years' time, as we turn into the next quarter of a century. And then he has this other thing that one of his friends lives by, which is 4 new experiences a year. So every single quarter with his kids, he does something with his kids that he's never done before. Yeah. So, for example, you might say they go and climb a mountain for the first time because the kids have just got to that age, or you take them skiing, like you did. Or for us this year, we're taking the kids to Disney in Orlando for the first time ever. That will be that kind of moment, but have 4 of those in the year. And the other thing, so it's like 1, 4, and then 12. Each month, create a new habit. So it could be something really small, but create a new habit that you implement in your life. And he kind of basically swears by, if you do that 1, 4, 12, then each year, if you think about it, the compound that you have, and he talks about if you start doing that when you're 40, think of all those amazing experiences you'll have over the next decade with your kids. You'll do 40 new things with your kids on a compound growth that you never would have done. Or you'll have 10 defining moments in that decade, or you'll have 120 new habits. I just thought that was a really cool thing that I saw between Christmas and New Year. And I've seen it before, but it reminded me to think, actually, get control of the diary, get those things booked in. So yeah, that's quite a cool thing. Jesse Isler, really cool guy to follow, actually. So yeah, I just thought I'd share that one as well.
Yeah, and the interesting thing of that you said, we're going to throw loads of ideas out here like that during today's episode, but actually you don't have to do, you mentioned Jesse Isler does one thing, his friend does another. You don't have to do that. You pick the one that resonates most with you and go for it. So let's just talk about goal setting and that environment. You mentioned a point-to-point run last year. How do you go about setting your personal and business goals, and how do you give yourself every opportunity to try and achieve those goals?
Yeah, I mean, people will have heard me potentially say this before, but I have a whole thing around my trilogy. And that's this is the big fundamental. It's like the foundations of my life, if you like. So I kind of have health, family, and wealth. And they're the three things that my goal is to be as good as I can at all of them equally without basically sacrificing one for the benefit of another.
Yeah.
And that's my thing, which is really difficult because I think, and I've seen mentors or people senior to me over the years that have basically gone down what I would call the wealth bracket, the career path, the business path, at a sacrifice to their family or at a sacrifice to their health potentially. And I've seen really successful, I'm talking guys in particular here, that end up kind of dying really early because they've lived such a stressful life with lack of sleep where they've been focusing on the career that it's been at sacrifice to something else. So my goals are set with those three things in balance. Over the last kind of 5 or 6 years, I've always set 3 of each. So I've actually gone 3 in family, 3 in health, 3 in wealth. This year I've changed that actually. And the reason why I changed that is I actually only hit 5 out of my 10 goals. I always have a smash goal as well, like a bonus goal. So I have 10 goals each year. But in 2024, I went quite big on my goals and I only hit 5 out of 10. I wasn't disappointed by it because the 5 that I hit I was really excited by it. But what it made me realize is I was actually setting the 3rd goal with ego in mind and not really emotionally connecting to it. Yeah. And I wasn't fussed that I didn't hit the 3rd goal. And it was always the 3rd one. So it was almost like I was doing it for the sake of doing the thing. So this year I've changed it to 7 and I'm doing 2, 2, 2 and a smash goal. Yeah. And that's how I dictate my goals, basically. I've got in my notes, my goals, they go all the way back to 2019. And then I've also got 4 what I would call life goals. It's almost like a mission statement for myself, which is the things that I want to do throughout life. So they're never changing. They're like big, almost unachievable things that you're constantly measuring yourself towards. And that's how I shape what I do from a goal point of view, really.
Was one of those long-term missions to run forever?
Yes. Yeah. I'll just wait until the knees pack up and I've got to turn into a cyclist.
Get an Ironman done, yeah. It's interesting that you said that about hitting your goals because I didn't hit all my goals last year either. And I have a conversation with my wife fairly regularly, probably every year when we sit down and do that. And she, particularly about the business goals, she says, well, how are you going to do that? I says, well, this is how we're going to do it. We're just going to do it. She says, I don't think you're going to do it. She always says, I don't think you're going to do it. I'm like, well, I live life purely as an optimist. And we did hit the goal last year. And we had exactly that conversation at the start of last year. I think that's too ambitious. I'm like, well, and I think there is something about making goals ambitious enough and being okay if you don't hit them. Because if you do hit them, and that's the other thing about having numerous as well, if you do hit them, or you hit a number of them, then that sense of achievement is massive because you're not setting a really achievable goal. There's no point in me setting a goal to go to the gym this morning, for example. You know that for where I am in my life, that's not achieving something really difficult.
Yeah.
But the goals for me have got to be fairly ambitious to excite me to put in the effort to achieve them because any goal worth having needs regular effort to achieve it. It's not just something that, you think of, wake up and, you can do straight away. And I think one of the things that really helped me last year and over the last couple of years since I've started doing it, I write down my goals each and every morning when I get up before the kids, have a cup of tea and sit there before I look at my phone. I read a page of the Daily Stoic while I'm making my brew, and then I sit down and write down my goals. And that's come as a habit that you talked about making those habits. I've habit stacked it. If you've not read James Clear's Atomic Habits, that's a massive thing for me. Habit stack. The Daily Stoic sits next to the kettle. I read a page of that in the morning, and then my book is always under the table where I sit and just write out those goals. And that has really helped me because I have not been particularly good at goals throughout my life, I don't think, until probably the last couple of years. But actually writing it down each and every morning really cements it. And there were stages throughout last year that we didn't think we'd hit, particularly the business goals. sort of October, November time. Anyway, December came through, and it's that thing that you talk about. You earned a profit in the last quarter, and we came through and we hit it. We hit it on the 20th of December before we were shutting that door. That sense of achievement was phenomenal. But I hadn't forgot the figure. I hadn't forgotten what we were trying to achieve, because I write it down each and every morning, and that's just something that works for me particularly well.
Yeah.
And then something I'm trying new this year, actually. I can show you on here. You won't be able to see it very well because it's behind all of my things, but I've created a bit of a vision board on my phone, which has got a new house that we're buying, new ensuite, bit of a gym thing, and some figures in there. So that every time I look at my phone, that's going to remind me about what my vision and goal is for this year. So there's loads of different ways that you can do this. But I think the big point of it is to get them written down on regularly checking in with them. We do it with the team. In fact, I've got them. We did it last year. I've got it on a whiteboard to my left here. We did it with the team to encourage them to do that, because I think there's a lot of people that go through life without necessarily, writing down the goals. I think writing it down, for me, has been so powerful to do it very regularly, but just writing it down to reflect back on it is so important, because if you don't, let's face it, it doesn't happen.
Yeah. I think you have to have direction. Yeah. That's what you're doing. And I think, as you've said there, I love the vision board on the phone, by the way. I think that's really cool. I actually created me and my wife a few years ago. We created it in Photoshop and then printed it off, but to put it on the phone is great because it's just right there all the time. I have my notes, my goals in my notes there all the time as well, that I kind of reflect on, and I love putting the green tick emoji next to them once you've done them. But yeah, I really like that, and I think it's really important that we go back and talk about that attachment emotionally to a goal. And it's good to say, right, I want my office to do 500 grand this year. That's a great goal, but you need to know what's the emotional attachment to that. And what will that achieve? And one of the avocado partners, I was doing a bit of business development with them in December. He's talking about a particular figure that he wanted to bank next year. And I said, well, that's great, but kind of why do you want to bank that? And he kind of said, I want to be the X figure person. And I was like, no, you don't. You don't want to be the £500,000 office or your 100K self-employed estate agent. There's a reason why you want to be that. What does the money do? And in his case, he wanted to buy a house with a garden for his son. That was the emotional attachment. That was the bit. So doing that figure for him next year potentially allows him to buy a house sooner, either at the end of the year or the following year, for his son to have a garden in his early childhood life. That's his driver. So now everything that he's doing from a goal point of view is to get his son a garden. Now that's the emotional attachment that will mean he will do it, and 100% he'll do it because he's got that mental connection. Whereas if you just do it as egotistical monetary figure, you probably won't be as driven to do it. But now you're driven to do it because it means something more, and it connects in the heart rather than just in the head. And I think that's really important for people, which is why I dropped one of my 3 and just made it 2.
You said it was an ego thing.
It was a head goal, not a heart goal. And I think that's really important. So yeah, I think it's so important. And I think Denzel Washington says it on some sort of reel, but he says goals without plans are just dreams. And I think, as you mentioned there, that's the next thing that people really need to think about, is if they've just got one goal, or they've got 3 goals, or I probably wouldn't have, more than kind of 10, but if you've got these goals you want to achieve, what's the action plan behind them? Because otherwise they're just dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that, I think the emotional attachment thing is really, really interesting, because in our job, in our industry, you get out what you put in. So if, Jeb Blount, Fanatical Prospecting, talks about one more call, you've got to have the motivation to make, one more call, or however many more calls if you're doing the prospecting run. Now, that one more call for your guy is about the garden for his son. It's not about the money. And it's easy to say, oh, I'll do that tomorrow if it's about the money. Suddenly, if you've got that focus in your mind that actually this call could lead to that sale that might make the difference of me having that garden this year or next, that is a very, very powerful thing. And it's the emotional connection, undoubtedly, that people talk about money. It's not, people don't want money. You don't have money lying around your house or anything like that. They want what money gives you, whether that's time or, whatever else. So it's really important to understand and to dig deep on those goals. So you talk about sort of the action plan. I got given for Christmas the 1% Diary, I think it's called.
Okay.
Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO podcast. And I've listened to some of his podcasts, but not loads and loads, to be perfectly honest. But I've started working through this 1% planner, and I was doing it just now. And the thing that has really got me excited to go through the process actually is he talked about daily 1%, and it goes through a process. It starts, interestingly enough, about your why, your motivation, your vision statement. So that's trying to get the emotional connection that you talk about, which I've been through that this morning. And then it talks about your goals and your daily 1% that can move you closer to those goals. And that is a really interesting exercise to go through. So one of my goals was more emotional connection with Rachel and with the boys. And so how I can do that, actually, that's probably not something that I'm particularly good at, but tiny little things that can move you closer to your goal. But if you do them regularly and consistently, we'll make it. So I think little things like leave my phone upstairs when I get in from work and leave it there. It's very easy to sit on the sofa while they're watching something, scrolling on your phone. It's so easy. I'm sure most of us do it. But actually, if I can put that away, okay, he might be watching and he's not bothered what I'm doing, but it's more creating that connection between them. So little things like that. And I think if you can break them down into habits that you build, that will make you progress. I think that's a really important part of the plan. If you can get down to the, those little details, doesn't have to be every day, but you can make these little conscious efforts to take small actions, which will help you through to your goals. Undoubtedly, that's one of the key things. Anyone could just make a goal and write it down and try and achieve it. And undoubtedly, some people will.
Yeah. My hack on that, on the habit side of things is I think it was probably 2 years ago. Most people have multiple diaries, right? They've got their personal diary, their phone diary, then you've got your work CRM, and then maybe something else, multiple diaries, and some things get booked in personally without the use of a diary. So I realized that doesn't work for me because I end up messing up and double booking and stuff. So I changed to very simply just my Outlook diary on my phone, my Outlook diary. My Outlook diary is 24-hour. It controls everything. If I am seeing the physio, it's in there. If I've got a really important work meeting in central London, it's in there. Yeah. If I'm picking up the kids from school, it's in there. And that has really helped me to have everything in one place. So I would definitely suggest to everyone, if you really want to be high performing and the best estate agent you can be in 2025, or as my coach says, thrive in 25, which is the tagline I'm stealing from him, then that's something that I think would really help. And the rule that I took from an action coach, probably about 3 years ago, I worked with an action coach for kind of 6 months where I was moving from an agent to work on the business, and he sort of helped me transition, was about the 40% rule. Now, he calls it the default diary. I call it the 40% rule. And what that means is all of the things that you must do in the compound growth way, the habits that you talk about. Mm-hmm. In the week, 40% of your diary are must-do things. So you can move, but don't delete them. Move, don't lose. But those 40% things are effectively the things that will achieve those goals that you've set. It will give you the year that you want to have, but you have to be disciplined and committed to doing those 40% of things. They're your opportunity to be proactive. And my diary, therefore, in all three of my triggers, whether that is doing something with the kids once a week or with the wife once a week, or running, my 12 hours worth of workout time that I need for my health goal, if you like, all goes into that diary. So every single week, 40% of my diary is booked up before the week starts. And that means that I know each week I'm going to get to that point. And for people that are listening out there, the average working person works about 230 days a year. So if you think, right, that's a Monday to Friday with 6 weeks holidays, that's kind of the average thing, 230 days working days. So if you're trying to attach that as an estate agent to your year, and you think, what one little extra thing could I do? That extra call you talk about, you think, okay, if I made one call extra in a working day, that's 230 calls extra in the year. That's where the compounding comes in. But having that diary habitually locked out allows you to kind of almost know that you've compounded those goals and you've compounded that action plan to hopefully achieve them. And I was guilty last year of the reason why I probably didn't hit 5 goals out of the 10 and did hit 5 is the ones that I wanted to do. I moved those appointments or kept those appointments. And the ones that I wasn't 100%, I just allowed to lose them subtly. And then before I knew it, they were out of reach because I hadn't compounded them.
And so I have a very similar system. So we run on Google Diary, and I have my Google Diary. I redid it yesterday, actually, for the year. We call it, from our coach, a high performance week. And Royston said, you have to plan your diary. So it's very, very similar. It's time blocking. You have the blocks of time put in for the things that you need to do each week. Interestingly enough, mine's more than 40%. So, but I wasn't very good at being disciplined enough last year to stick to it. And I had the conversation with the team in the office yesterday morning. Please help me stick to what is in there and what should be done each and every day. So it's a very similar way of, talking about living your life with intent, not just, and I think it's probably one of the big differences as an estate agent. If you want to have your best year as an estate agent, you can't let the things that happen in this business dictate your day, your week, your month, and therefore your year. You've got to say at some stage, this is what I'm doing in this period of time. The other stuff that, seems urgent, because let's face it, there's always something that seems urgent in this industry.
Yeah.
That has to wait, because actually, if I don't do this thing, and it might be prospecting, it might be calls, it might be going for your run, whatever it is, this thing is important to help me achieve my goals. And that's why it's so important at this time of year to sit down and write down the goals, but then do the planning in behind, because before you know it, if you don't, you say, oh, well, I'll do that later or whatever. It never happens. You get to shutting the doors on, 31st of December or whatever. And well, you've not hit those goals. You've been fluid. The industry, the job, the business, whatever, it's pulled you from pillar to post. And suddenly you're sitting here and you've not spent the time working on the business, or you've not spent the time working on yourself to enable you to hit the goals that you may or may not have set.
Yeah.
It's all about having the intent. But the first thing to do, if you haven't already done it, is to, put the time in the diary, or to find the time, I would say sooner rather than later, to sit down and actually write it down and make a plan, because if you don't show the intention, it just will never, ever happen.
Yeah. The other thing that I think estate agents, this is really important for our industry, for estate agents, that this is something that I've been an advocate of for years and years and years, ever since kind of being a sales manager in a busy office, is to put the buffers on. So if I love an analogy, as you've probably told. So if I look at a week as a bowling match, then okay, if I'm really focused, and we're looking at the pins, across it. How can you get to that end score at the end of the week where you're really happy with it? Now, if I'm really focused and I'm dialed in, I might get a strike. I might get 9 pins. I might get a half. I'm really happy with that. But if I'm distracted or I'm thinking about something else, I'll probably get 3. At the end of the week, I might not even be looking, because I'm being pulled all over the place. And if I try and throw a bowling ball down the lane without looking, I'm probably going to put it in the gullies. I'm probably going to miss. So the way that I do it is I say, well, if the bowling match is the week, give yourself the buffers. There's nothing wrong with it. And the buffers for me are blocked out Monday morning, never do an appointment, never do a call, never speak to anyone on a Monday morning. Now, I appreciate you might have your Monday morning meeting, but then after your morning meeting from 9 till 12, nothing gets booked in. That is your buffer time to start the week, because that's locked out, because you don't know what's coming on Monday. a week before. So if it's there, you can deal with it and you get off to a win. I love on a Monday to schedule my LinkedIn posts for the week. It means that that part of my week is taken care of. That's my first buffer. That's the left gully buffered.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, Friday afternoon, the end of the week, exactly the same thing. From 1 o'clock till close on Friday, nothing gets booked in. No appointments, no diary, I don't speak to anyone. That is my other buffer. So if I'm throwing the ball down the lane and I'm not looking, I'm going to hit pins, as long as I don't throw it in the other lane.
Yeah, but that's about staying in your lane. We're going to think one thing that we're going to talk about as well is that knowing, that is a really good analogy. And it's good to have those analogies because it helps visualize it. And I think it is a really good one because you can just be pulled from pillar to post in this industry and suddenly you've got a ball and you've not achieved what you wanted to set out to achieve. So easy to do. And it doesn't have to be Monday morning or Friday afternoon. I would suggest that they're both, I actually quite like doing appointments and prospecting on Friday afternoon personally, but Monday morning is a non-negotiable for us because you book appointments in Monday morning, you're running around. That's how you start your week. If you start your week running around out of control, the chances are you will end your week in the very same way. It's the eat the frog. You start being productive, you'll be productive throughout the week more often than not. And Foxton's built a business on it. Didn't they? They had their prospecting time. They had the no appointments.
2 to 4 call out.
Yeah,
it's their thing.
If it's good, if it's good enough for them, why isn't it good enough for us running our independent, estate agents? But I really like that analogy about getting in your non-negotiables so that you're able to try and achieve your goals. So we're going to talk a little bit about, before we go, about staying in your lane as well, Ian. You mentioned to me off air about there's a bit more of intention to do that from your perspective, and it's something that I have struggled with as well. Again, within the business, you get pulled from pillar to post. I think that's the challenge as an industry. Something Sally Lawson actually said to me from memory when she came on, which was quite a while ago. I think it was a COVID interview. She said about getting your team members in their lane and to stick to their lane. So what sort of advice have you got for anyone listening who maybe struggles with that, particularly if they're an agency owner running a small business? Inevitably, you're going to have to wear numerous hats. So how do you stay in your lane? How do you plan on improving that ability to get those strikes?
In our industry, ultimately, one of the hardest things to do, isn't it? Because you're constantly being pulled in a different direction to the next. Every day is a different day in agency, and you're always dealing with different people. You've got different houses on, you're speaking to different buyers. Staff problems are different, staff desires are different. So it is really hard. And I think there's a lot of power in the art, it's spoken before, but a lot of power in the art of saying no. No's not a negative. No means that you're kind of staying disciplined. I think what I've found from working in agency for 21, 22 years is we are by default yes people.
Yeah,
we want to please. We want to please our boss. We want to please our team. We want to please our clients. We're quite socially sort of focused. We want that recognition, a lot of us. And, in whichever way we take the recognition, we want to be like the happy kind of, I'm the good guy. And that becomes quite difficult because then it means you can easily be detracted from your goals. And as we said, you have to then remember what you're trying to achieve this year and what the emotional connection to it is. And that's the reason why you potentially say no or stay disciplined, because motivation is something that comes and goes, but the art of discipline is something that will really make that 1% that you talk about. So if you've got your diary 40% locked out, the 60% is yours, but what you do with that 60% is really important. So you can't really kind of say to anyone the answer to it. It comes from within inside, but it comes from self-awareness, I think. And that's something that I've tried to work on a lot myself over the last probably since I turned 40, I would say, is a lot more self-awareness. And understanding what the body's doing and understanding what a yes or a no is doing to my diary or to my time or to my energy as well. Because if you say yes to everything, you run out of energy a little bit. There's only so many decisions you can make in a day. There's only so many ideas you can have in a day. And if you're, when we're doing running, we talk about you got a matchbox in a race. If you're going to sprint up that hill in a 100-mile race, you just burnt 2 matches. Once the box is finished, the box is finished. And the same applies to a estate agency and business in your day. Every day you've got a matchbox, and there's only so many decisions, ideas, creativity, high performing moments you can have. Once you've burnt them, you burn them. And if you're using them up on something that doesn't keep you in line with your goals or what your desires are, then you've used them up. And it's the end of the day and you think, shit, I didn't really achieve anything today that I wanted to. I did a lot of good stuff for that person or that person, but nothing really for myself. So without giving like a direct answer, because I don't think there's a silver bullet to it, I think a lot of it comes from self-awareness
Yeah, I think that's probably something, if I think about what I've become aware of over the last years, and this is experience, isn't it? Experience in a long time in the game relatively. And I now am able to go home at the end of the day knowing that there is stuff still to do. And I think when I was younger, I would try and do it all in one day and work myself up. So I was worrying about stuff that I've not done it. And if you are an estate agent, or particularly if you run an estate agency business, there will always be something you could do. You could quite easily work 24 hours a day. I could wake up, come into work. It's 9:05 now. I could start work today, and I could not stop till 9:05 tomorrow morning easily. If I so desired, it wouldn't be productive. It would, those last 8 hours would be completely useless, at least those last 8 hours. But there's always going to be something to do. So being able to know that, be aware of it, and being able to let it go so that you can relax and come back recharged, that's just as important as, having the motivation to try and achieve the goal. So I think that's a really good point as well. And part of that self-awareness goes back to what I said right at the start, is knowing where you are now is the first part of setting the goal so that you can improve each and every day. You don't have to be an ultramarathon runner to set off and, start achieving some goals, which might be, running 2K, running 5K, running 10K, whatever that might be. Self-awareness to know where you are. Actually, the part of this is about having your best year as an estate agent. And that best year is what that best year looks like to you. You're not, the guy maybe who in your office who's been smashing it for years and years. It's about being the best version of yourself.
Most of my agency career, I played Monday night football. I've only really started running since lockdown, but I was a fitness instructor before as an estate agent, so I've always been a gym rat. Like, fitness is in my DNA, if you like. But I played Monday football, 8 till 9, quite late, 8 till 9 on Monday. I loved it. I loved the fact that it was Monday, because I knew at the end of Monday it's going to be a busy day. I was going to blow the cobwebs off, blow the steam out with football. 8 till 9, loved it. And that was the start of the week for me in agency. You'd had Saturday busy, Monday, normally I'm kind of in a senior neg type role in the office. So I'm negging all the files, I'm getting the deals wrapped up, I'm doing all the cross-selling. It's just a great day for the whiteboard, just ticking things out.
Absolutely. What does it about that?
Just loved it. And then I finished and I was like, right, I get home, have a little bit of dinner, then went and played football. And it was just a lovely way to sort of start the week. But it was yinged and yanged with the busyness of ticking boxes in the office to having the fitness. And it's something that we haven't really covered here, but the fundamentals of moving and being healthy. You don't have to run 100 miles. You don't have to run 5K. You can walk, you can play pickleball, there's also squash, whatever your thing is. But I think if you want to be the best estate agent you can be in 2025 and you don't do anything that's fitness related, that is the first thing that I would change.
Yeah. This is, not about being the best version of yourself, which will help you be the best estate agent. I think it's very, very good advice, because it's really easy. You've got your 40% week that's got running in there, it's really easy if you're not planning with intent to let time take over exercise. And the excuse of I've got no time. No one's got any time. That's the honest answer. Nobody's got any time to do it. You've got to make time, and you've got to prioritize that, because health, fitness, mental health, all of those things go hand in hand. Ultimately, you get that right, then your wealth bit comes in, because I'm sure that your family health and wealth, if you drop the health, the effects on your family and your wealth part are, absolutely massive. So we've not talked about it particularly, but it's a fundamental part of, the two of ours routines, definitely. And we could go into that if we needed to. There's no point in doing it today, but I don't think that I'm anywhere near as productive if I don't work out in the morning. It's just that start. And again, yours might have been at night. Mine is in the morning for me. It's whatever works for you as an individual. Find it, do it consistently would be my advice on that side of things.
When I was younger, it was the night. I used to go to the gym afterwards, but now things have changed. Now it's the morning, and even if it's just a 10-minute stretch, as soon as I can get outside, I get outside. But I do think if you're someone that doesn't do anything, start walking. Go to the gym and just go on a cross trainer and watch a YouTube for half an hour, but just get the body, just do something. And I think that will make a big difference as well to people. The other thing that I think is drastically underestimated is sleep habits as well. And I do think, without going too deep diving on it, but I do think, especially in our industry, everyone's addicted to caffeine. We're over caffeinated, and the science says that you've got a 12-hour window for caffeine to wear off. So the one tip that I give everyone is, if you want to go to sleep at 10 o'clock, you need to remember that 10 to 12 hours, depending on the body. So if you do best case scenario, 10 hours, caffeine is in your system for 10 hours. So if you're someone that's having a coffee at 4:30, or you're having a Red Bull at 4:30 in the afternoon, you want to go to sleep at 11 o'clock. It's not happening. You may be able to hit the pillow and close your eyes, but you're not in a deep, proper sleep of recovery. And you will wake up feeling groggy, craving caffeine and sugar, and the cycle will start again. So the other thing, if you want to be the best version of yourself in 2025, start with that habit, because it will mean you will get up in the morning, you will spring out of bed and feel ready for the gym or for a walk or whatever it may be. But think about your sleep and caffeine habits, because ultimately that sets up everything. If you wake up in a good mood because you're ready to wake up, rather than being like, wow, that was a bad night's sleep, then that will dictate a really good day from a bad day. And that's more or less changed my performance, if you like, since I recognised that. So that'd be my last little tip before we wrap up.
Yeah, and that's a great way, because undoubtedly there will be people listening to this who've already had the caffeine. If they're listening in the morning, there'll be people listening in the afternoon that are about to. So I think that's really good advice. Hopefully there's some golden nuggets in there. At the end of the day, I say this at the end of every episode, but if we help one person to try and make and achieve some goals, then that's been a really useful session for us. As you know, we do this because we love our industry. We want to see it improve and get better. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please share it out on social media, reach out to myself or Ian, or ideally share it with your colleagues in and around the office. I'm Mark Worrall. He's Ian Macbeth. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you again next week.